What, you know what? Just to be safe, thing you did end up saving your ass later.
There are times when it's crucial for me to take something with me when I leave home the next day. I figure that of course I'll remember, because it's so crucial, but just to be safe, I will put the thing on top of my car keys. And yes, that's bailed me out a couple of times.
I went to the doctor because I couldn't get rid of a cough. Turned out I had pneumonia. A pretty bad case of it.
I once removed a thing I had to remember from my wallet to get my wallet and go. I am not a smart man.
Backing up computer files onto an external drive on a regular basis. Power goes out one afternoon, and I was the only one not profusely sweating.
Investing in a UPS is also a good idea too as extra security. You get a few minutes of battery to safely shut down everything.
I used to always carry a small high-powered flashlight in my pocket. One day my wife had to go to the ER. She was having problems with her feminine bits. Her gyno was called, and during the exam, my wife began to bleed out. The ER was insufficiently equipped as far as portable light sources on hand, and on a whim, as her doctor stepped out of the room, looking panicked, I made a snap decision, pulled that flashlight from my pocket, and offered it to the doctor. I showed her how to operate it, and to make a long story short, that $5 flashlight saved my wife's life by making it possible for her doctor to find the bleed and stop it. It didn't save but it saved the life of the woman I love more than life itself.
Also, in emergencies when the power is out for days, a UPS can recharge phones, or power a cable modem and router, for quite a while.
Saved the GPS location of my vehicle on Google Maps before exploring a national forest with a road trip buddy. We grabbed some fishing poles and head out towards the nearest water location on our map to hopefully catch a couple fish. Turns out it was a swamp, not a lake, and we got so incredibly turned around it could have ended very badly. We really didn't go that far in from where we parked, but somehow ended up on the other side of the swamp without realizing it. Drizzling rain, mosquitoes, bear tracks, and the sun started going down before we found that the GPS coordinates saved. It would have been a cold, wet night in the woods at a minimum, and more than likely a search and rescue required situation.
Grabbed a helmet when riding a bike down a steep hill as a kid. Normally didn't, but I ended up falling at top speed and breaking my helmet and chipping 3 teeth. Could have been my head that was broken.
Somehow, it randomly occurred to me one day to purchase pet insurance for my dog. Some months later, my dog suffered a severe back injury, and needed surgery to reverse that was expensive out of pocket, but without the reimbursement from insurance it would have been way worse. Edit, back taxes. Here he is, standing by, and for a more recent pic, here he is and, looking, most of my dog pics are of him asleep, since otherwise he moves around so much, it just looks like a blur.
Had my boat trailer bearings repacked by the boat repair shop dealer before I went on a trip that I had to tow it for 400+ miles. I usually repack the bearings myself, but figured I'd have the pros do it since I had a long haul ahead of the day. Before I left, I decided to double check that the bearing case was full of grease. Without it they would overheat and I'd be royally and stranded with a high risk of a wheel actually coming off the trailer if I didn't notice it in transit. There was no grease at all in the bearing case on any of the 4 wheels. I would have been lucky to make it 20 miles before something serious. This has been a habit for decades. Pat my pocket to make sure my keys are in my pocket before closing the locked house door, my car door, etc.
Sucks when you need just one green mana but you keep drawing swamps. George.
You know what, I'm gonna look to see if all the vehicles have come to a stop, just to be. I told myself this, right before I enter an intersection in my car. It saved my life because there was a vehicle doing around 100 km per hour, 60 miles per hour, that would have torn my car in half and killed me.
I didn't want to wear a helmet while riding my Razor scooter because I couldn't see how I could possibly fall and hit my head. Anyway, I fell and hit my head hard. Luckily I had decided to wear a helmet just in case.
Was in a dune buggy with a roll cage and just driving it around the neighborhood. Put on a motocross helmet just to be safe. When we wrecked, the side of the helmet that hit the road was completely white as all the paint had been scrapped off.
Lived in Baltimore at the time. Pulled up outside my place after getting off a late shift and had to get a backpack out of my trunk before going in. I noticed a group of teenaged kids hanging out on the corner and thought, nope. Called my roommate to come watch me walk to the door. About 10 minutes later, a girl comes running down the street bleeding, saying she got jumped by the group of kids for no reason. Stay alert out there, y'all.
Bummer, the city that bleeds. Back when I used to smoke, my friend and I went to pick up a particularly large bag of it. We took 2 cars with the idea it'll tailgate him in case any cops in our town do a routine pullover. The corner of our street had a small shop, and wouldn't you know who was parked there ready to pull over the next car. Couldn't believe our luck when it worked. They pulled out behind us. Sirens went on and I pulled over and my friend just continued on home with the goods. I got a routine alcohol test and sent on my way.
I forwarded an email to my non-work address so that after I left and anonymously reported my employer to the state, I couldn't get stuck with the blame for.
My friend and his wife were having their first child. They had gotten a big packet of information and paperwork to fill out before the due date to make things easier. There were also brochures for genetic testing and other things that could be done, and one of the things was about saving the cord blood. My friend said that he looked at the front of the brochure and his wife asked if they should do it. It is not cheap. A couple $1,000 to save it and a few hundred a year after that. And my friend said their daughter was born later that year. 3 years after her birth, they had a boy, and he was born with an immune disorder, no white cells, and his big sister's cord blood and stem cells were used as a treatment.
I always do this, especially when at a concert or large venue where I know I'll definitely forget where I parked. That, or if there's row signs, I'll take a pic of them.
When I was a student, I'd do my own work on my car to save mechanic bills. One day, after changing brake pads, I was driving on the motorway at 100 kilometers per hour, the freeway at 60 miles per hour for our American friends, and felt a slight shuddering through the steering wheel. Given you're not supposed to stop on a motorway unless it's a real emergency, I was reluctant to pull over to check if anything was wrong. Though having only worked on the car that morning, I decided I'd check, just to be safe. Turns out I hadn't even finger tightened the wheel nuts. Only threaded them about a half-turn grammar.
Normally I'm pretty impressionable and cave to peer pressure, but this one time when I was younger I was hanging with my friends and a couple of older high school guys I'd only met that day. The girls were all fawning over them, but I could tell they were idiots. When they all wanted to go for a drive with the guys, I thought, nah, I don't trust these guys and I think it's best I just call my parents and go home. I got a call the next morning from one of the girls who was passenger. One of the high school boys was driving. They'd had a serious crash and one of the girls wasn't wearing her seatbelt and hit her head on the dash and was in a coma for 6 months. She was in intensive care and rehabilitation for years. Still can't believe of all the days I decided not to go with the flow, it probably saved my life. Terribly sad about my friend. We were really close, but she never came, right, and her personality changed. I still wonder how successful she might have been and if we'd still be friends if that hadn't happened to her. Really sad.
Always remember Wowie Wallet Phone Wikis egg, backup, edit. Like 20 people have responded with spectacles testicles wallet watch, and while each time I read it seemed like a fine substitute. Not everyone has testicles, not everyone wears glasses, and not everyone wears watches, whereas generally everybody has a phone, keys, wallet, and eggs. You can actually pronounce the acronym too. How TF do you say STWW?
Had some weird achy symptoms and went to the doctor even though I figured I was probably overreacting. Turns out I had cancer.
Not me, bitter co-worker. Was trying to separate some railroad ties with a crowbar as part of his yard work for the day, and when it popped, a nail flew and embedded itself in one of the lenses of his safety glasses he threw on because he had them for work. He keeps them on his desk as is not just for the workplace folks.
Locking your car doors as soon as you get into the car.
Hurricane in Florida last year knocked out our power for 5-ish days. We had been talking about gearing ourselves up in case of an emergency and were planning to get a gas generator and solar panels and whatnot, but were planning to slowly build up our emergency backup power for a few years. A month before the store, we started with a backup battery for the fridges and it saved all our food. We had to super ration the power output, and I have a family member with medical devices that was a problem we couldn't deal with. Fully, not vital life-sustaining stuff, but an air mattress bed and formula pump for feeding, but still would have been lost without it. Still planning to gear ourselves up slowly, but we have a gas generator now to be safe.
Leaving a spare set of keys at the pub that I live above. Went out on St. Patrick's Day and had my coat stolen. I keep my keys in my coat. At 3 in the morning, I had genuinely no idea how I would have been able to get home otherwise. Definitely not some big life-saving moment or anything, but it was a relief. Lol.